Charlie, one more question for me about this. When you think of the Houston Astros, do you think Rob Manfred punished him enough, or do you think he should have punished him worse?
When they went to their investigation and it gave the players immunity so that they could find out what really happened, then the punishment was never going to be enough. Let me put it to you this way. This is one of the great quotes of all time. The late, great Frank Robinson was asked about the guys who passed him on the all-time home run list, and one guy who passed everybody on the all-time home run list. Guys who were at the time that were going to pass him, and the thought was, that they were using performance-enhancing drugs to enhance their play and their power and their home run prowess and everything. And Bob Costas interviewed Frank Robinson. He said, if truth were to come out that these guys used performance-enhancing drugs, what would you think should be done? And Frank Robinson said, their record should be wiped out. And Bob Costas said, wiped out? And Frank Robinson's stone cold face said, yes, like they never played. Like they never played.
Do you agree with that?
Do I agree with that?
Yes.
Hard to say. I mean, are you talking about a whole career? How can you pinpoint when?
Do you think Barry Bonds is a Hall of Famer, even though he did steroids later in his career? He had 400 home runs and I think he had 400 stolen bases before he even went to San Francisco.
Okay, Fred McGriff was a dominant player, hit 493 home runs in an era when 500 home runs was the benchmark to get in the Hall of Fame. And then you had the steroid guys come after him, blow by him, and diminish his 493 home runs. Was Fred McGriff a Hall of Famer? He was for me in the era that he played. He was a dominant first baseman, great power hitter. I thought he was tremendous in the time that he played. I think he's a Hall of Famer. So these are things that as baseball fans you can argue.
Right.
But when you throw into the mix the guys who supposedly use performance-enhancing drugs, Sammy Sosa, is he a Hall of Famer?
No, I don't think so.
Mark McGwire, will these guys ever get in? And now you're looking at even the great Roger Clemens,
right?
Because it came out that he was in the same category. And then do you want to go to A-Rod or A-Fraud, whatever, everybody's on board now. He's with J-Lo and MLB's, congratulations. He's on Fox, he's on ESPN. This was the guy who lied and lied and lied and finally got caught and then said, I'm going to sue Major League Baseball. Then he was going to sue his own players union. Right?
He was going to sue the Yankees too.
Right. Then all of a sudden he goes away for a year, right? And then he plays one more year and he isn't as good and they buy him out and he walks away. Now all of a sudden that's great.
Right.
He's forgiven for everything that happened. He lied. Ryan Braun is still revered in Milwaukee.
Right.
Boy, did he lie and make that guy, the guy who handled the test, look very, very poor.
That was probably the worst thing out of all the stories that we heard with the steroid situation, the HGH or whatever you want to call it, the human growth hormones. That story was the worst story of them all because Ryan Braun was lying after lies after lies, and then that guy got fired from his job. So Ryan should be ashamed of himself. He really should.
Charlie, last question from me. Talk about the World Series winning call, the final one, the final out of that Game 7. Was that something that you planned beforehand? Was it something that just came to you during the game, just with the intensity and the enthusiasm of the game? Did you plan it beforehand? Was it something earlier in the postseason? Talk about that call and what it was like for you.
Well, I thought earlier in the day, and I only thought about it because it was Game 7. This is it. This is the last game you're going to do. The season is ending tonight, one way or another. And it's something like in the back of your mind. So I've heard stories about people who maybe wrote something out and then they messed it up, or you want to be spontaneous. And I said, I have to think about this a little bit because I want it to mean something. I want it to mark the moment. and I don't want to regret that I left something out or didn't say what I wanted to say. Or so in my head, it's like I had something written in my head of some things I would say, to Mark coming back, obviously coming back from 19 and 31. The depths of a 19 and 31 start. They've climbed to the top of baseball's highest peak. That was the only part of it that I thought of at any point, just that sentence. And then the rest of it, just plays out. But I'll tell you what, I never like to get too far ahead of myself. I thought very relaxed before Game 7. My partner Dave and I'm like, this is it. We've waited our whole lives for this. Here it is. You're never going to be more prepared than Game 7. You know everything about everybody. There's nothing left to prepare. We just had to get through a million live reads before the first pitch because not only were we carrying our own commercials and live reads and for the team and for our flagship station and our Nationals radio network, but then to be able to have the local broadcast of the World Series, you have to carry everything ESPN radio would air on their broadcast, all the commercials, all the live read sponsorships. So I didn't want to sound like an auctioneer, but by Game 7, we were used to it. We had a plan, and it would sound good. It wouldn't sound like we were slamming something in every 4.5 seconds to get through it. But when it hit me, again, another come from behind. I'll tell you what, the nerve-wracking part was innings 3 and 4 when my partner was doing the play-by-play, and Max Scherzer put men on base in all 5 innings that he pitched, and he gave up 2 runs early, and it seemed like, especially in that ballpark, he was 1 pitch away from the Nats being down like a 3-run homer, down 5-0, 4-0, 5-0, and you're thinking, then it's a really big hole because he's a strikeout fly ball pitcher. But what he was doing in that game was missing by bouncing a lot of pitches because he knew that in that park you can't miss up. So he was trying to get guys to swing at sliders and cutters in the dirt, knowing that his catcher Gomes would be able to block those balls because he wanted to miss down. He didn't want to miss up in that park. And so not being 100%, he gutted his way through the 5 innings, and Corbin gave him the great 3 innings, but it didn't look like they were going to solve Greinke. Greinke was as good as he'd ever been. Obviously, he doesn't throw as hard as he used to. He was their version to us of Anibal Sanchez. He was having a terrific game. The Nats hit a bunch of balls back at him, which is the worst place to hit it to a guy who's won, 5 Gold Gloves. He never misses anything back at him. And then he gives up the home run to Rendon. And, and they had that New York Yankee ace, Garrett Cole, warming up in the bullpen seemingly for a couple of innings, and didn't bring him in after he walked Soto.
I was surprised.
So, amazing. And then, Kendrick hits a pitcher's pitch. That was down and away. A cutter down and away. No right-handed hitter could hit that off the right field foul pole. So, when that happens, you're like, oh my God, this is it. This is the chance to win. But still, I'm being cautious in my mind that this game's a long way from being over in the 7th inning. When it was 6-2 going to the bottom of the 9th, I was feeling pretty good. And when Altuve struck out on 3 pitches for the second out, that's when it came over me. I had like multiple voices in my head, but one dominating, like, this is going to happen. The Nationals are going to win the World Series. And then leading up to that last pitch, went to a full count, and a couple of things I was building up to. Obviously, you don't have crowd behind you because you're on the road and everyone's standing at Minute Maid Park, but you could hear a pin drop. It's not like it would be if you were in your home park and the place is ready to explode. And then there were a couple of foul balls, and you kind of said all your buildup already. And so on that note, I was like, yeah, it's going to be another 3-2 pitch from Hudson. He has the sign come set, the kick, and here it comes, and then the rest. So it wasn't like my typical call leading up to that because I felt like I had used up everything in the first 8 pitches of the at-bat or whatever it was. But, the rest of it, outside of the one part of the sentence of the call that might have been prepared, remember where you are. So remember where you were, something that I've said at every big moment, of which sometimes we never got to those big moments in the other years. But that's something I've said to for a milestone, and none bigger than winning the World Series. So people have asked me if I'm happy with it. I asked them if they were happy listening to it. If they say yes, then I'm good.
Well, I know a lot of National fans, and they were very, very happy that we were going to interview you today, and they're listening right now. So, do you have anything to say to all the fans out there? With if there's going to be a season, or if there is a season, do you think the Nationals have a chance again this year?
Well, you always have a chance with that pitching, and if you stay healthy. And, Max Scherzer is going to be 36, so you hope that he is still the Max Scherzer you've watched. At some point, going over the top of the hill, down the other side a little bit. You don't know when that's going to happen for him. Of course, Rendon is a big loss. He may never have a year as good as he did last year. Even if he didn't, it'd still be pretty good. You lose a terrific defensive third baseman and a tremendous offensive player. So there was, a hole there to fill that they couldn't fill with one player. They were interested in Josh Donaldson, but not at the money and the years that he was interested in signing for. And so, they kind of have a bunch of options with Asdrubal Cabrera, who was great for them after they picked him up off the scrap heap released by Texas in early August, and he drove in 40 runs in 38 games. He can play third base. Starlin Castro they signed, basically replacing Brian Dozier, thinking he could be the everyday second baseman. If Carter Kieboom, who doesn't have any experience playing third base other than about 10 games last year in AAA and a couple of weeks in spring training, which to me didn't make him look like he was maybe major league ready to play third. But you know what? He may not have a minor leagues to go to this year, this season. So he may get his chance to play some and be tutored at the major league level if the rosters are expanded and he's like your 26th player. And you could play Castro as an everyday player at third. He played there the last 2 months of the season for the Marlins after they called up Isan Diaz to play second last year. You still have Howie Kendrick can play second, third, and first. You likely platoon with Ryan Zimmerman and Eric Thames at first, with maybe Kendrick playing some there. If they have a DH, the Nationals have all these extra guys, so one of them can hit. I think that helped them in the World Series, so it wouldn't hurt them if they end up going with a universal DH in this shortened season that we may have. So, certainly if they stay healthy and their offense is good enough, their pitching is certainly good enough. They added they added Smith in the bullpen. So, I think they have options now, better options in the bullpen than they had at any point last year.
Charlie, one more question. I'm going to let you go. What about their stories are coming out with the new CBA that their DH might be coming to the National League. What are your thoughts to bringing the DH to the National League?
Gosh, people are going to hate this, but I'm more purist. And while, most pitchers are automatic outs, a lot of them can't get the bunt down. It isn't so much watching the pitcher hit that I like. It's the strategy that the manager has to go through, the use of his roster, versatile players with double switch. I just think you lose. And I'm sure if there is a universal DH, I worked in the American League with the Rays for 7 years, so I'm no stranger to that, and everybody would get used to it. But it's a game for the manager, and if you're a baseball strategy, you love that, and you just don't think about, boppers and hitting the ball. I just think it's a better game. It's a better chess match. And if you ask some of the great managers, Tony La Russa went from Oakland to St. Louis. He told Joe Madden, if you get the chance, you got to go to the National League and manage. He did with the Cubs. Davey Martinez played both leagues as a player. He was a bench coach in the American League, the National League. He's no comparison. He loves the National League. There certainly seems to be a growing sentiment to go to the DH, but I'll always be on the other side of that.